should warn you, I am going to be discussing adult themes in this talk. That is why the 18 insert is there. Not to be offensive or to shock, these are reflective of the conversations I have with children and young people all of the time. It's just someone did walk out the use of the C word a while ago, so that's why I put it up there. I was talking about a conversation with a 7-year-old where he was telling me how he knows the worst swear word in the world, and then prompted to say it to me 5 times in a row. That's kind of my world. My formal title is Professor of Social Responsibility in Information Technology. I work around how children use technology, basically. I have also got some other less formal titles, such as Professor Pornography, which someone called me a while ago, and the National Sexting Expert, which was a worrying thing. If you want advice on lighting and angles, that sort of thing. I've done quite a lot of work in sexting, not because it's something I specifically look at, it's just something that comes up an awful lot in conversations with teenagers. I work a lot with the UK Safer Internet Centre. I work a lot in schools talking to young people about how they use technology. I guess the main focus in what I do is to see whether technology changes or normalises behaviour, which we would view as entirely unacceptable if it was in an offline context. I also spend a reasonable amount of time talking to the media about this sort of thing. I was described by the Daily Mail as one of the UK's leading academics. That's a poison chalice, really. I've actually got a T-shirt with that on. One of the UK's leading academics, according to the Daily Mail. For any of you that are Daily Mail readers here today that are happy to admit that, bear in mind I was interviewed by them a while ago and they said, have you got any really bad kids we can talk to? So that's kind of their agenda. My second word was off on that one. But just to reflect on that, Sky News were worse. Sky News, before an interview once said, can you say children are going to die? So when you're looking at the sorts of media output they provide, reflect on that's their editorial policy, sadly. I also spend quite a lot of time talking to people in Westminster about this sort of thing, and the first part of this talk is going to be very much about where the Westminster focus is at the moment. I'm going to be quite critical of current government policy. It's not really a party-specific thing. The opposition have equally poor perspectives on these sorts of things at the moment. And I think one of the challenges is this is quite long-term stuff. You don't solve this stuff overnight. Yet, if you've got government cycles in 5-year slots, what can we do in 5 years so we can give ourselves a pat on the back and say we've done something? And I'll sort of reflect on that as well. I normally say by the end of this session you're going to be thoroughly depressed about the state of society, and then I'm going to leave. All right? So that's something to look forward to there. I should say I do have to rush off at the end of this talk because I've got to take my son to kickboxing tonight and I live in Cornwall. But do track me down online. If you've got any questions or comments, by all means send me an email. Interestingly, if we're looking at this from a digital well-being perspective, one of the things that's changed significantly in my life recently, because I've had glandular fever. Anyone here had glandular fever? It's horrible, isn't it? It goes on for months and months and months. And I was told, oh, you need to reduce your stress levels. Now, I don't particularly ever feel that stressed, but I thought, well, what can I do to reduce work pressure? So I've taken email off my phone. My God, it's amazing. I used to find myself, bombing it down the M5 on the outside lane, go, gosh, yeah, I better reply to that. Oh no, it's insane. So while I'm focusing on young people and their behaviours, let's not think that this stuff stops at 18, because it certainly doesn't. One of the barriers to this stuff being viewed as stopping at 18 is the fact we refer to safety. This is all about safety. This is about making people safe online. We, as in the higher education community, and I'm sure students are here today, are very aware of digital issues or how digital technology facilitates what we might say is unacceptable behaviours or behaviours that impact on well-being and similar, way beyond the age of 18. It's just safety is a word that we're going to make the children safe, and then we'll worry about other things as well. I was actually told by someone at my own university when we were dealing with an issue of grooming that you can't really call it grooming because the victim's over 18. Really? Because it was clearly grooming. This was someone who was in a relationship with someone they'd never met before, which always strikes me as quite interesting anyway, and she'd never seen him because his webcam was broken, but he knew what she looked like, and she performed on webcam for him. He knew where she lived, he had all her mobile details, he had all her social media logins, and he had her email login. And two people who lived with her came to us and said, we're worried about our safety. And this was 2 or 3 years ago now. Oh no, they're adults, they can deal with themselves. No, I think that's a fundamental well-being issue myself. So yeah, I'm gonna sort of go through different topics. I'm going to start off by flagging off the government. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about young people and their behaviours itself, do a little bit around gaming, look at sexual behaviours, leave you all depressed, but I'll leave a little sort of light on the horizon before I go. If we start from a safety perspective, we get this sort of thing kicking around all the time. Oh, well, safety. As I was told by the Labour spokesperson on these issues a while ago, we need to make cyberbullying illegal because it's unacceptable. Which is an interesting starting point anyway. How do you make cyberbullying illegal? If I go into a school now, cyberbullying is now used for any term of abuse online. Charlie, who I've known from the age of 14, 15. If I was to go on Facebook later and go, you look like a twat in that group meeting earlier on, Charlie, am I cyberbullying him? No, I'm just being an idiot online. Bullying has to have other elements to it as well, but it's become a term that's used for so many other things. We look at all these things, they sort of come and go in trends, if you like. Anyone remember the case of a 14-year-old boy who was murdered a while ago by a 19-year-old boy who he met in gaming? 2 or 3 people nodding, most people going, I'm not sure. Kind of pass it by, because grooming's about 50-year-old boys preying on young children. 14, 19, that's not really a media story, is it? It's an extremely serious case of someone befriending someone, I'll come back to gaming in a while, and then eventually coercing them to come over to their house where they murdered them. Extremely sad story, but it's kind of, grooming's not the thing we're focusing on at the moment. And it's a real worry that we seem to be jumping from technology to technology. I was asked last week if I can do a talk in a couple of weeks' time on what the next years of social technology is going to be and how it's going to affect young people. I just went, no. Why not? Well, if we were to go back 20 years ago, this is what's going to happen in the next 20 years. We're going to have this technology where people take photographs of themselves and then send it to someone else, and after 6 seconds it disappears. It's nonsense, and that's ridiculous, isn't it? One of the most popular social media platforms. I shared it on Facebook yesterday, someone has produced a vibrator with a selfie stick on the end of it. I'll let you reflect on that one for a moment. Could we have said 20 years ago, we're going to be so obsessed by technology that we will walk around like that all the time? In any given situation. My niece, who is now 15, says she's got 15,000 images on Snapchat, taking 15,000 images on Snapchat, most of them being her going, I'll come back onto those sorts of issues in a minute, but it bounces around, it changes, and if we try to focus on the technology, we're always on hiding to nothing, because it's going to change all the time. I can remember when Snapchat first came out, I was discussing it with a friend of mine who's got teenage boys, and said, oh, thanks for raising that, we saw, you know what he's just said, that's going to be awesome for sexting. You know, to me, and how can we possibly predict what's happening? But what you can do is look back at the last 20 years and go, wow, we've got it really wrong, haven't we? We've had our focus completely wrong. Let's stop people doing this, let's stop people doing that. This was a comment from a parent. I did a talk at a school in Devon. I did an assembly for year 7s and 8s. So that's 11 to 13-year-olds. And with 11 to 13-year-olds, I didn't walk in and start talking about pornography or, I'm the national expert on sexting. Do you know what sexting is, children? Put your hands up if you know what sexting is. I didn't do anything like that. But I did talk about how, as you're getting older, people might start to ask you to do things you're uncomfortable with, or maybe they're going to send you something that you don't really like, and what you might do about that. And you know that's unacceptable. If someone asks you to do that, you don't have to say yes. And this parent wrote in very upset. It was a long tirade. It went on for many pages. First of all, she said that children of that age shouldn't be on social media anyway, so why are you teaching them about social media? As a 14-year-old girl said to me a while ago, it's a bit like saying you shouldn't do sex ed until after you've had it, isn't it? Really? I thought it was quite nice. She then referred to children who are on social media as idiotic and disgusting and said they should be spoken to separately, and then came out with this comment here. My girls are fine. And the teacher said, what do you think I should say in response? Now, I was already slightly annoyed because she'd referred to young people as idiotic and disgusting just because they use Facebook. So I said, Tell her that won't stop a year 10 boy sending her a picture of his cock though, will it? That's harsh, isn't it? But it's a perfectly valid thing. This might be a situation that happens to this girl in 2 or 3 years' time. It's nothing to do with her behaviour that someone has decided to take a picture of her genitals and send her, because unfortunately that happens. And before we start thinking it's just teenagers that happens to, do we remember the MP who had to resign about 12 months ago for doing exactly that? Chatting to an attractive female party supporter on WhatsApp. He knew she was an attractive female party supporter because her profile picture showed she was attractive and female. And after a while, he was in his hotel room and he thought, this is going well, took his pyjamas off, took a photograph of himself, sent it to her. Turned out she was a Daily Mirror journalist who was a he. And he resigned, Brooks Newmarks, if you want to look it up, saying he was addicted to thrill seeking or something. And the Daily Mirror did apologise. Do you know what the Daily Mirror apologised for? Because the image they used was taken from a Swedish model's website. They didn't ask her permission before they used it in that profile picture. They didn't apologise for anything he'd done, because at no point did they say, can you drop your trousers and take a photograph of yourself? He decided that was how he would behave. So this is a worry, this is a challenge. If we're looking at the stakeholders and looking after children's well-being, if we have parents going, well, they're fine, I don't really care about anybody else. We could stamp out playground bullying overnight. I have a solution to stamp out playground bullying. You take a playground and you paint 1 metre squares all the way around it, and then you tell each child in school, go and stand in your square. Don't talk to anybody. Awesome. No more playground bullying. But really, is that really going to work? This was a comment from a far more sensible person. I had a girl from one of the Plymouth Comprehensive Schools do a week's work experience with me just before summer, because I'd done a talk at the school. She said, can I come and do work experience with you? And I said, you know, it's not going to be 9 to 5. And she said, no, I'm really interested in these issues. So when she started, I said, what do you want to look at? She said, I want to look at mental health and body image. I said, well, you know my stuff's basically online. She went, yeah. And she sort of looked at me and said, of course those two are inextricably linked. And she wrote a beautiful piece of work as a writer. And she came out with this comment. I want people to understand what teenagers are experiencing. This is life around us. Even though the Daily Mail would like us to believe that there are scores of teenagers who spend their entire time stood in front of mirrors taking photographs of themselves and exchanging them with each other, that's not generally the case. Some will do that. But will they get exposed to it? I was talking to a lad a while ago who said he doesn't go on Facebook anymore. Now, I am told by younger children, you know, the 10 and 11-year-olds who shouldn't be on Facebook anyway, who are on Instagram and stuff instead. Well, Facebook's full of old people, isn't it? So I was expecting him to say, well, there's too many old people on it. I said, oh, so how come you're not on Facebook anymore? Too much porn. I said, really? Because my timeline's not full of porn. Oh, yeah, everyone's on. You know, even if this individual at home made sure he couldn't have access to anything like that, it's going to be happening because it's all around them. It is the world around them. It's the world around all of us. So to say, my child doesn't need to be spoken to about that because she's not going to be affected because she's not stupid, seems to be quite a disturbing and facile thing to say. But let's move on to government policy. Let's talk about pornography for a while. I have deliberately taken this screenshot from the Daily Mail because this news story drove government policy for about 3 years. A third of 10-year-olds have seen explicit images. That's absolutely shocking, isn't it? We need to do something about that. Anyone saying, I think it's fair, and anyone in this room that has it, it's fine, 10-year-olds seeing porn. Interesting to look around, you look behind you, really? It's a really worrying thing to be said. And the government response said, we need to do something about this. When you unpick that study, it turned out it was based on 88 children in Sussex. Now, I have spent a lot of time talking to primary age children. Again, I don't go marching in, they go, right, hands up, who's looked at porn? Because I would expect quite rightly to be marched straight back to the school if that happened. But we do talk about content and what sort of things might you think people are worried about you seeing. It is extremely rare any child of that age I've spoken to ever mentions anything about pornography. Occasionally it happens, normally because there's an older sibling that's shown it to them or something. But for most young people of that age, it's not even on their radar. But the government said, we need to do something about this. this is something we need to deal with. This is what online safety is about. If we're going to protect children online, we need to stop them seeing pornography. And it really sort of drove a whole agenda. I don't know if you've noticed, but you can no longer browse pornography in Starbucks. I'll let you sit and reflect on that one for a moment. Now, on the one hand, you go, that's completely fine. What? I really can't see an issue with that at all. I didn't even know you could in the old days. Any of you ever been in Starbucks and there's someone with a laptop in the corner? You sort of look over and go, oh, no, not in public, surely. It doesn't happen. I can remember actually a police colleague of mine going into the Apple store in Regent Street in London, where they have unrestricted internet access in there, and saying to one of the blue t-shirted people in there, what's stopping me browsing porn on this then, son? And he went, nothing, but we'd rather you didn't, which was quite an amusing response to it. But this was viewed as, this is protecting young people. And you do end up with some weird situations. So, I know you have, Charlie, so keep your hand down on this one. Anyone else been to Asda in Bournemouth? I did a talk in Liverpool a while ago, someone went, yeah, I have actually. It's like the tourist destination. You come off the A30, you go to Asda in Bournemouth, you pick up your groceries and you go off to your holiday. I mention that because I spend quite a lot of time there because my daughter's a gymnast and she goes to the gym, which is next door to Asda in Bournemouth. They have Mumsnet approved Wi-Fi there. Again, something to reflect on. Mumsnet, that well-known technology provider. And I was talking to a journalist about the filtering debate at the time, and I said, hang on a minute, I'm on Mumsnet approved Wi-Fi at the moment, let's have a look, put in Pornhub, gets bounced back. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's perfectly fine that I shouldn't look at Pornhub in Asda. Then I put in FHM. FHM gets blocked in Asda. Mumsnet decided that FHM is unacceptable to look at in Asda. It's like a lad's mag. It's not as bad as nuts, it's glossier than nuts and stuff. But you could go downstairs, purchase FHM, go up to the cafe and read it, but you couldn't go online to look at it. So you have immediately these interesting tensions. The other problem with filtering, which was the solution, basically the government policy has been to say to industry, make sure people have filters available to them at home so young people can't access pornography. Apparently in a speech last week, Baroness Shields, who is the government minister for online safety and security, said 95% of people in the UK have filters in the home now. Hands up who's got filters in the home here. So the rest of us are what, deviants? Or it was unpicked by the Open Rights Group, and it turns out what she meant to say was they have it available to them. But I've had many emails from BT, oh, we noticed you haven't installed filters at home. The problem with filters is they generally work on keyword matching. If I were to say in a moment there's going to be a photograph of an extremely large cock on the screen, how many of you are going, well, hey? How many of you are going, as an ornithologist, I'm very interested to see what this image is going to be? Because that's the judgment the software makes. Scunthorpe is very famously blocked quite a lot. First pop quiz of the day, Scunthorpe. Why would Scunthorpe get blocked? Just take the S off the start of it. You've got that bad word and then and if you're saying to industry, stop this happening, otherwise we're going to legislate, they are going to be quite aggressive with their filtering. So now you have a situation where you have a 12, 13-year-old who is exploring gender identity or is curious about sexuality and tries to search for those words on their filter system at home, and they can't. I met someone from a sex and relationship education charity in Starbucks, actually, in Plymouth a while ago. I'd never met him before, so you're now in a situation where you're going to smile at every single bloke that walks into the shop thinking, is that him? Hello, are you here to meet me? So, what did I googled him. Came back, this site is blocked. It has sexual content in it. So he comes and sits down. He didn't write about porn on the website. I haven't. But Starbucks filters have decided that because he'd used words like sex and gay and sexuality and words like that in his website, it must be in some way seedy, therefore it should be blocked. Now, David Cameron did this speech in 2013, which I've deconstructed a great deal because I found it so awful, where he basically said there are two challenges for young people growing up in the connected world. These are access to pornography and access to indecent images of children. Now, clearly those are both serious things. I'll come back to the whole issue around young people and pornography in a moment. He went on to suggest that because Mark Bridger, who killed April Jones, had both images of indecent images of children and pornography on his PC, there is some sort of a causal link between them. Therefore, we needed to make sure. But the thing that I found really disconcerting was the fact that he said two major challenges. These are the two major challenges it covers. These are the two things from the digital world that affect children the most. I'll come back to that in a little while, because there was a great piece of work done a while ago by Miranda Horvath at Middlesex University, where she was commissioned by the Office of the Children's Commissioner to look at all the research around the influence of pornography on young people and put out this report, this meta-analysis. And she came back, and basically the report says, we don't know. This is long-term stuff. Clearly there are concerns, which I'll come on to in a moment, but the conclusion wasn't any child that sees pornography will become sexualised at an early age and will become sexually aggressive, etc., etc. And this really wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for something that was very clear. I was told in a discussion around this at the Office of the Children's Commissioner that we are now in a society where we are accepting of violent pornography. Now, I don't think we are. I don't know, did anyone have conversations down the pub with their friends about some great violent porn they saw or something? It seems to be right. Let's take the extreme position and try and deal with something about it. From my own conversations with young people, older young people, sort of like towards Key Stage 4, I had on many occasions the conversation, what should a lesson about pornography look like? And we talk about pornography for about 2 minutes, and then we go on to lots of other things as well. Now, I have heard of issues, I do really feel for teachers in this area. There was one great case of a teacher who stood up in a class, and I was told this from a colleague of mine. Right, we're going to do a lesson about porn today. And kids in the class went, oh no, come on, Fitzer. He went, no, come on, we'll look at it, I know I do. That was it for the rest of the session, just absolutely crucified by these children. Yeah, so have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? So, you know, it can be done quite badly, but these are the sorts of things that always come out of discussions about pornography. Yes, there's concerns about expectations and stuff. When I'm talking to a 14-year-old who's worried about the size of his own genitals because, you know, he's seen some quite big ones and stuff, it does, you know, you start to think that there are a huge range of issues here. And are we going to say, right, if we put some filters on at home, we don't have to address this anymore? Because I can remember being asked in an inquiry about this by a peer, if we sort out this filtering thing, we'd have solved all these problems once and for all, will we? I said no, and she looked very disappointed. Because are we saying it's only coming through the pipe in your home? It's going to come via Facebook, it's going to come via mobile, it's going to come via all these different things as well. And it started to already get you thinking that actually, while we're focusing on the thing, the object, the particular phenomenon, what we're actually talking about is stuff that we've talked about for a very long time, which are things like expectations, relationships, and all those sorts of things. Just to move on to something slightly different for a little while, I work with a charity called Southwest Grid for Learning, who do an awful lot of work around online safety. And they've got this long-term, ongoing survey. Whenever they visit a school, they ask the young people at the school to fill out this survey. And they pose the question to primary-age children, what do you do online? Unsurprisingly, gaming came out. Anyone surprised to hear that primary-age children, the main thing they do online is gaming? This is more interesting from my perspective though. 30% say uploading, 30% saying they're engaging with YouTube, they're producing their own content for YouTube, they're making contributions themselves to various channels. Who's this? I'm looking at the youngsters in the room mainly. Anyone over the age of 25 know who this is? It's PewDiePie. I put this up in the front of a bunch of 7-year-olds the other day, they all went, "Ah, it's PewDiePie!" He's really annoying, isn't he, PewDiePie? He's really loud. Actually, he's not PewDiePie, it's PewDiePie! He's an internet celebrity. He has 50 million subscribers now? 40 million. He basically does gaming walkthroughs, where he screams when he sees zombies and stuff. It's really banal stuff. But, you know, a few years ago, if I'm talking to young people, you say, what do you want to be when you're older? You get one or two standard responses. I want to be a footballer, or I want to be famous. You don't get I want to be famous much anymore. You get instead, I want to be YouTube famous. PewDiePie's got over 30 million subscribers. He makes a massive amount of money from advertising. Zoella is another one, if any of you are familiar with Zoella, a female YouTube celebrity. She's just bought herself a 6-bedroom house in Brighton on the proceeds of advertising she gets from her YouTube channel. We are all in the wrong jobs. And what you see, there's a very famous video on YouTube of a lad in his teens eating a Dorset Naga chili pepper. Have you seen that, the Dorset Naga challenge? It's hilarious. And he says, first of all of my mates are doing the cinnamon challenge. Anyone know what the cinnamon challenge is? Eat a teaspoonful of cinnamon powder and try and eat it. Because it basically sucks all the moisture out of your mouth, so you end up with this clump of cinnamon in there. And he said, his own words, the cinnamon challenge is for pussies. I'm a man, so I'm going to eat a Dorset Naga, the hottest chili pepper in the world. And he eats it whole, spends the next half an hour shaking, vomiting, scooping yogurt out of a tub, eating ice cubes. And he says at the end of this video, I do these things so you'll watch me online, subscribe to my channel. Now, if we're going back to 30% of primary age children engaging with technology, this thing, my daughter has a friend who's 10, who's also very good at gymnastics. And she's got her own YouTube channel. And she posts up videos of her doing gymnastics on that YouTube channel. 2 of the other girls at the gym have made it their mission, any time that this girl posts a video on YouTube, they go on it to tell her how rubbish she is. So even at the age of 10, she's starting to expose herself to the nasty world of internet abuse. Funny, talking to Keith a while ago, he was talking about getting media coverage. How do you deal with the comments at the end of a media story? Well, I just ignore them these days. But yes, it used to, you'd get something in the media, immediately someone would go, oh no, another bloody so-called academic talking rubbish, what do they know about the real world, and that sort of thing. You get, people are arses online, basically. But if you're thinking at the age of 9 or 10, you are wishing to engage with this culture where you've seen people extremely successfully, but at the same time you're opening yourself up to these levels of abuse. Maybe if we're just focusing on pornography, we're doing them a disservice. Because when we pose the question of what actually upsets them, we do ask this question, what upsets you online? You get some interesting responses. So you get swearing and you get people being mean. That stuff comes out a lot. The sorts of content, the one sort of content that far more young people have said causes upset than any other. Anyone want to take a guess? Animal videos. Videos of animals being hurt really seems to upset primary age children. So we better start filtering the RSPCA then. Where are we going to stop with this? Someone said a video of a man punching a cow. Why would you punch a cow? There's only going to be one winner there. Here's a little pop quiz for you now. Why would a project on the Victorians cause a primary age child to be upset? We were talking about this earlier, Charlie.
Workhouse?
No, not the workhouse. What's the name of Queen Victoria's husband? Prince Albert is the name of Queen Victoria's husband. Some of you are still looking at the Gravely. Prince Albert is also the term for a genital piercing. So somebody, oh yes, of course, now you said that, I remember. Apparently he had a genital piercing because in Victorian times it was unsightly to have a trouser bulge. So if you tied it to your leg, so you'd thread a piece of ribbon through the ring and tie it to your leg. Every day's a learning day at university, isn't it? You go, don't know what he's talking about, but I did find out why a genital piercing was important in Victorian times. This was a child, because we unpicked this with him, did a search for Prince Albert on an unfiltered Google image search and came out with images. So it demonstrates that filtering can be useful for a tool to prevent some upset. I did hear a case at the school doing this once. Projection screen like this, unfiltered search, did a search for Prince Albert, the images came up, the teacher went, oh my god! Which did amuse me greatly. But let's have a look at these last two. My friend texted me to say her dad had died, and when my dad told me on Facebook he didn't want to see me anymore. When we're talking about well-being, impact on well-being and upset, how heartbreaking is that? And what level of filtering would prevent that from happening if the government agenda is to make children safe online? When you work out all of these things together, so we took all of the comments from all these 4,000 responses, the word that comes out far bigger than any other, the most popular word in all this stuff, is people. People cause upset to young people online. Yes, we have got nakedness. Animals quite big, I think. So let's move on to gaming for a moment. Children's well-being around gaming, because we said very popular amongst young people. very popular as people are growing up as well. Although apparently I'm not a gamer anymore. I don't quite a lot of work with young people around gaming. I'm not a gamer anymore because I'm a gamer. Oh yeah, what's your prestige rating on Black Ops 2 then? Oh, I don't do multiplayer gaming. You're not a gamer then. And look at me, they're like the oldest person now. My son starts telling me about Mario Kart, and I'm like, boy, I was playing that game before you were born, so shut up and think. But there was a case earlier this year where a number of head teachers from an academy trust in Cheshire sent a letter home to parents saying, it's come to our attention that your child is playing ageing appropriate games. If you don't stop that, we might report you to social services because we believe that's child neglect. And the school suggested they were doing it because they were trying to reach out to the community and engage them with a discourse around online safety. And yes, we do worry about children playing age-inappropriate games. Interestingly, regardless of the age of the young people I'm speaking to, they will always say they're all right, but younger children shouldn't play them. So even if I'm talking to 11-year-olds, yeah, we play GTA, but you shouldn't let younger children play it. I talk to 16-year-olds who say they've grown out of things like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. So you're talking about a game you're still 2 years too young to play as far as the PEGI rating is concerned, and you've grown out of it. One of the reasons why a lot of them say they've grown out of these sorts of games is because of the squeakers. Anyone know what I mean by squeakers? You've got your headset on, you're doing a multiplayer game, you hear a little boy, well, I'm going to come around your fucking house and kick your fucking head in. Because you've got some 10-year-old who's trying to be as abusive as possible on these games. It's a wonderful environment. Sit and listen to a gaming environment for a while, it's fascinating. We've worried about gaming content for a very long time though. Hands up who's old enough to remember this game. This is Death Race. Death Race came out in 1976, after the movie Death Race 2000. Death Race was strongly criticised in the press and by some welfare groups because it encouraged vehicular manslaughter. Because here, you've got your car, and you're driving around, and you're trying to run over these people. They're called gremlins. They're not called people because that would be unethical, but they're called gremlins. So back in 1976, we're saying people that play this game will engage in violent conduct in their cars if they do it. Anyone drive here today? Do you want me to take this off the screen? Are you feeling the rage building up? This is a more niche game, but a very interesting one nevertheless. This is called Custer's Revenge. This came out in 1982 as one of the Atari console adult titles. If you are sat there thinking, this looks like a photograph of a screen grab of the game where an excited naked cowboy is trying to get over to the other side of the screen to have sex with a naked Indian squaw tied to a post, you are correct. That's exactly what's happening here. He's got to avoid the arrows to get there. That's the gaming part of it. This game was banned. It has got quite a seedy message to it. There's a naked woman tied to a post. Get over the other side of the screen and have sex with him. Before it was banned, it shifted thousands and thousands of copies and was sold for twice the price of a regular video game cartridge at the time. But it said it's going to encourage sexual violence. Shall I move on? Is anyone feeling horny? Who's this? Trevor! You're my young demographic. Anyone else going, oh no, you've got a picture of Trevor? If I did a year 8 assembly, year 8 boys a while ago at school in the Southwest, put that up, who's that? Trevor! Oh, it's Trevor! For 5 minutes they were talking about how cool Trevor is. And yeah, Trevor is cool, isn't he? Trevor's the psychopath in Grand Theft Auto 5. He stamps on someone's head until they're dead at one point in the game. He engages in some violent conduct. This is the game we are most worried about young people playing at the moment. If we focus purely on content. Now, I did have a conversation with a primary age child a while ago. Oh, I love playing Grand Theft Auto. Oh, really? What do you do on it? I go around the golf course, I hit people in the leg with golf clubs. It's really funny. That's all they do on the game. It is a really funny game. But it's got very adult content in it as well. Now, you couldn't be much more explicit about the level of content in this game. This is adult content in these games. If we were to say we don't want children playing these games because it's going to be harmful to them. These are two games which I've heard about far more violence from than any of the games I've just talked about. Any of you Minecraft fans here? I know your son is, Charlie. Minecraft and FIFA. If we're to take an entirely content-focused perspective on this, what on earth is happening in Minecraft and FIFA that's encouraging violence? Well, FIFA for one, rage quitting on FIFA is famous on YouTube. Just go on YouTube, do a search for FIFA rage quit. Someone gets really angry because they've been beaten in the game, they throw their controller across the room. Someone in my lab class at school has gone through 4 Xbox controllers playing FIFA. I spoke to a parent who was pinned up against a wall because her 16-year-old son wanted her credit card because he needed to buy a new player. He needed to buy a new player. Not wanted to, he needed to because he was getting beaten by his mates, so he needed a new player. Minecraft, though. What happens in Minecraft? For those of you not familiar with Minecraft, it's a bit like virtual Lego. You build stuff in it. I say to young people, why is it so good? Because you can do anything you want in it. You can build anything you want, you can create worlds, it's fantastic. And then you ask your mates to come into these worlds, and then your mates, for top James, decide to trash what you've just built. And that results in abuse and fallout, and in some cases physical fights. Because it's not only trashing the world, it's capturing the moment your friend sees the trashing of their world, because you're Skyping them at the same time and you're seeing them interact with it, so you capture the moment they see their world blow up, and then you post that on YouTube. This is, I'm told by young people, good trolling. This isn't bad, this is good. But if we were to take the offline version, this is something I've spoken about quite a lot, probably with children. If you were to have done a project at school, and you built a castle, and you leave it on the side, and you go out to the playground, and you come back after break time, and your friend said, I've just jumped up and down on that. Is that funny? No, that's really mean. Invariably, the response is immediately, that's really mean. So why is it alright to do it on Minecraft? Well, they should have backed it up, shouldn't they? It's kind of like the technologically engaged viewpoint. But this starts to raise questions about what is it about gaming that causes these issues? Now, I did have a comment from a 7-year-old once who did say to me he likes playing Grand Theft Auto because you can rape people in it. That was a difficult conversation. But when you unpicked that, there were other issues as well, such as the fact he was playing the game on his own in his room for as long as he wanted to, the fact his parent had bought him the game to keep him quiet. There were other issues going on there as well. Content is clearly an issue. Excessive screen time, digital babysitting, but these are the two that I think we forget about. The example I told you earlier on, gaming environments provide environments where people have a common interest. If you have a common interest, you are more susceptible, oh, well, I'm into this as well, why don't we come and meet up and stuff like that. Gaming is a classic environment for grooming. But abuse, the levels of abuse in gaming are quite significant. While on the plus side, I go and visit many schools now, and there's plenty of young people in those schools that talk about someone in their year who's gay, or someone in their year who's lesbian or something. No one bats an eyelid, it's fantastic. Because at the school Charlie and I grew up in Bournemouth, can you imagine if someone said in class they were gay, what would happen at lunchtime? You'd be beaten up, absolutely guaranteed. So you have positive progress on that side of it. But it is perfectly acceptable within a gay to call someone gay or a fag to mean they're rubbish. You're completely gay at this. You're a complete, total fag at this game. I'm told that is not homophobic. We have just used the word to mean something different. The levels of violent abuse that happen in games, and it's perfectly acceptable. And it's almost like, how can you say the most offensive thing? Oh, remember that time? I remember one game. Remember that time where you said you hoped my mum got raped and got AIDS? Yeah. This is 13-year-olds. So again, if we're looking at it purely from a content, influence and prevention perspective, we are onto a real hiding to nothing. I'm going to show you that picture very briefly, but I'm going to come back off it again because I'm uncomfortable showing you this picture. But I think it's a picture that allows you to explore quite a lot of detail around this issue. And this is a picture from a Plymouth University student that went on Twitter last year. So this was someone who had a night out, they came home from the pub, they were busting for a wee. They were wearing something where they had to take the whole thing off to be able to go for a wee. They forgot to close the door. This is an 18-year-old freshman to university. One of their housemates walked past and he goes, well, hey, takes a photograph. Then retains that photograph. A week later, they're in a pub quiz in one of the local bars in Plymouth. And they're joint first And this is for a box of wine. This is quite a big deal. And the tiebreaker question is, send us the stupidest photograph you've got on your phone. And the lad who kept that image on his phone got a verbal consent from the person in that image to send that image. And they won the wine box. But then the bar owner tweeted that photograph after, she said, obtaining verbal consent from that individual. In that one case you've got, first of all, why is it okay to take photographs of your housemates sat naked on the toilet? Secondly, why is it okay to retain it and show it to other people? Thirdly, why is it okay to then use that pub quiz? You have issues around consent, because consent is one that comes up a great deal these days. Oh, but they said it was okay. Well, were they inebriated at the time? Did they have capacity to consent? That's something that the Crown Prosecution Service talks about a great deal. But in that one simple case, you say, well, if we're going to say, does technology change what we view as acceptable? There's a number of steps there that would suggest that there are worrying trends here, which again, maybe we're not going to address with prevention technology. This is another interesting one as well. If we are to reflect on the state of society, this was a student from Nottingham Trent University. He was at a party. He saw a girl asleep on the sofa at the party. Thought, top bit of banter here. Gets his friend to video him slapping her in the face with his genitals. She wakes up in the morning. The video is doing the rounds at work. She sees it. And she says, quite correctly, that's sexual assault. She goes to the police. He's arrested. He had 9 months inside for sexual assault. He was a criminology student who wanted to be a lawyer. I mentioned that story with a female friend of mine who's the same age as me a few weeks ago. She went, oh, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? I said, sorry? Oh, it's only like drawing on someone's face with a pen, isn't it? Anyone saying, yeah, I agree, yeah. So I said to her, how old's your daughter now? 10. So if in 3 years' time she comes back and says, oh, I was at this party and some guy slapped me in the face with his dick while I was asleep, I'd kill him. But it was really weird the way she said, well, it's only a bit of, japery and stuff. And the comments under this was taken from the Daily Mail again. A bit extreme to lock them up, isn't it? The one thing I come back to again and again is, within a technological world, we seem to have forgotten what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, particularly amongst young people. The number of times I've spoken to young people and they will say stuff like, lad in class doesn't speak to me anymore, why not? Because he asked me to take a photograph of myself and I didn't. Well, who have you told about that? Well, nobody. Well, do you think, what's he done wrong? Let's take the offline version of that, shall we? I go into work in the morning and I go past the receptionist and we talk about the weather and did we see the rugby yesterday. By the way, can you send me a picture of your boobs later? Is anyone going to say fair play, son? Well done, fella. No, it's pretty crap, isn't it? You'd hope she'd report me and I'd get dismissed for sexual harassment. But because it's facilitated in an online context, oh well, it's only a bit of banter, isn't it? Brought home very strongly to me, interviewing someone who recently left university and was working in an oil refinery. The word I draw your attention to here is flirted. Alright? If I was to drop my trousers now, in 20 minutes, once this presentation is over, and you go, oh, this chap came up from Plymouth University today, he was a terrible flirt. Anyone going to say that? She's legitimising sexual harassment because it's delivered via technology. If these people were to walk into her office and drop their trousers and go, hey, what do you think of that? She wouldn't be saying, oh, get out, you flirt. She'd be hopefully going to HR and reporting them. Again, I have heard it said to me, oh, you've got to put up with a bit of banter at work, haven't you? That's not banter, that's sexual harassment. And the fact that people are saying, that's banter, is legitimising it. And if we're saying, oh, young people do daft stuff with technology, are we surprised at all? There was a case 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've spent a lot of time talking with lawmakers about this sort of thing. Interestingly, if you are over the age of 18 now, and you send someone an image of yourself and it gets sent out further, they're breaking the law now under the new revenge porn legislation, which was part of a new bill in April, and has also already had a number of successful prosecutions. There was a boy at school who took an image of his genitals and sent it to a girl who sent it around the rest of the school. The school called the police, and both the boy and the girl got charged with possession and distribution of indecent images. And it's an interesting one because I'm certainly not a fan in any way of criminalisation of children for this sort of thing. In fact, the CPS guidance specifically says it is rarely in the public interest to prosecute a young person for doing this sort of thing. The police were criticised, but their response was, well, we were called to a school who said we had to deal with something. A law had been broken. What are we supposed to do? What hasn't come out in this story is what the scenario was. Did he take an image of himself and send it to her voluntarily, or did she ask for that image and then redistribute it? Because that's two very different situations. If she didn't ask for it, maybe that's her way of responding. How do I deal with this? I've just got a picture of someone's genitals on the phone. And it happens on Tinder. It's not something that's sort of going to go away or anything. The number of conversations I've had with teenage lads in particular, they've always got a friend who, if they fancy a girl, will take an image of their bits and send it to them. And my next question is generally, what do you think they hope to achieve by doing that? And generally the response is, I'm not sure now you said that. It's kind of like, beep, beep. Do you fancy going for coffee? No. Now I've seen your bits. You know? But like I said, it's not just the teenage population that are doing it. As I mentioned earlier, I've done quite a lot around this whole phenomenon. But what I really get frustrated about is the fact it's viewed as a technological thing, when actually it's not. A comment from a 14-year-old boy at a school in Liverpool a couple of years ago, popular girls don't sext. Wow. So what do you mean? Well, they don't need to, do they? They've already got an older boyfriend, that's what they're doing it for. Because they're seeing people with boyfriends and thinking, well, that's the way they got a boyfriend, therefore I've got to as well. Well, when you start to unpick the issues around sexting, it's not about having a mobile phone, it's about issues of self-esteem and peer pressure and respect and boundaries and consent and all those other things that we don't really address too much because it's a bit complicated, isn't it? Surely it's better just to talk about confiscation of mobile phones rather than trying to address the esteem issues of young people growing up in a society where the currency is, are you in a relationship? I was in a primary school a while ago, the number of year 6 kids that wanted to tell me whether or not they had a boyfriend or girlfriend, because that meant they were better than someone that didn't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. But that's hard. Saying you've done that too much, you're going to be prosecuted for that, or saying, right, I'm going to take your mobile phone off you now, so that'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I can remember in my day with Polaroid photos. Polaroid photos? Had the occasional one go around our school. Very difficult to make 200 copies of a Polaroid photo. The difference is the technology facilitates the distribution, the shaming, all those other things. It amplifies it. But issues around self-esteem and peer pressure and similar have been around for a very, very long time. This was a more interesting one, just to draw this thing to a conclusion and, like I said, depress you about the state of society as a whole. This was a story in Plymouth, entirely coincidentally. There was a 14-year-old lad, split up with his girlfriend, said he accidentally sent one of his friends an image of his girlfriend. I'm not sure how you accidentally do that, but there you go. And this friend came out and went, great, have you got any more? He went, I've got 78, you can have them for a tenner. Now in this case, because the Crown Prosecution Service guidance says if there is malicious intent demonstrated, maybe you should move it forward to prosecution, and the family of the victim in this case wanted to move it towards prosecution. These two were prosecuted, and they ended up with referral orders, so they're not on the sex offenders register, but they're one step away from the sex offenders register. If they ever get a DBS check or something in the future, it will come back that there was a sexual offence when they were a minor. Now, I've spent quite a lot of time sort of lurking on the comments at the bottom of news stories and on Facebook stories of Facebook pages of various media outlets. And Plymouth Herald has its own Facebook page. And when Plymouth Herald broke this story, this was a comment from one of the respondents on the Plymouth Herald Facebook page. It's her fault. If she hadn't made those pictures and sent them these pictures in the first place, these two boys would not now be in a situation where they can't visit schools when they're older as parents because they've been accused of a sexual offence. She shouldn't have taken these pictures in the first place. Do you want to guess the gender of that person? It was female. This is what I find interesting. Does anyone know about the Steubenville case in the US? Steubenville case in the US happened around 2012, very famous case. 16-year-old girl passed out at a party because she was too drunk. Two of the local college football stars in Steubenville stripped her naked, took photographs of her naked, posted them on Twitter, sexually assaulted her, took photographs of the sexual assault, posted them on Twitter, to the point where one of their friends said, guys, I think you're breaking the law here. They were arrested. One of them ended up with 2 years and one of them ended up with 1 year. The response on Twitter at the time was mainly, when's she going to get charged for underage drinking? Well, she's ruined their lives. The CNN reporting of the case when the sentencing happened was, these two poor boys, their lives have been ruined through one silly mistake. Now, I've talked about that case a lot in schools, and on 3 separate occasions, girls have said, well, she did have it coming to her, didn't she? And I find that quite depressing. So what do you mean she had it coming to her? Well, you shouldn't get that drunk at parties. You should expect that sort of thing to happen in your party. So you're telling me, if you're at a party, you should expect to be sexually assaulted if you're drunk? Well, that sounds a bit harsh, but you know, you just shouldn't do it. So, yeah. What can we draw from this? If we focus on technology and prevention and safety, we're not going to address the underlying causes of this. These are well-being issues. If you have the scenario where someone receives an image of one of their peers' genitals, and their way of dealing with it is to send it round to lots of other people in the school because they've got no other way of coping with it. They're not sure what to do with it. Can anyone remember at school the lesson where you go, you know, someone's going to send you a picture of their dick. What you shouldn't do is send it around the rest of the school, because that certainly didn't happen when I was doing RSE at school. We used to have Mr. Cloak showing us how to put a condom on a banana, didn't we? Which apparently is pretty similar to what sex and relationship education is still like now. We seem to be in a loop of blaming the technology for it. This week, a teenager bullied on Yik Yak. You know what Yik Yak is? Location-based, anonymous commenting. Right, we need to ban Yik Yak because she was bullied, because she attempted suicide, and people are saying, oh, why don't you just get on and do it properly and stuff? We need to ban Yik Yak. At what point do you stop with this cycle of let's control the technology? Because 2 years ago it was Ask FM. Remember the case of Hannah Smith from Ask FM? Hannah Smith was a teenager who was mercilessly bullied on Ask FM. Ask FM was another website where you could post a photograph of yourself up and say, right, comment about this entirely anonymously. It was one of the few pieces of social technology I didn't get. I had many conversations with teenagers saying, why did you go on this? Because the third or fourth comment is going to be, you're so ugly, or you're so fat, or you're a dick, or something. There's 2 reasons why you go on it, apparently. First one is to demonstrate you're resilient and you can have really good comebacks. And the second one is because in amongst all the abuse, someone might say you're pretty and that's what makes it worth it. But at the time that Hannah Smith committed suicide, the Labour spokesperson on these issues went to Latvia, which is where Ask FM's offices are, had a photograph of herself taken outside the offices with the headline, I'm here to get answers. Then when the serious case review happened, it turned out that most of the offensive comments posted to Hannah Smith were posted by Hannah Smith, because they unpacked it and they saw where the IP addresses were coming from. So it turns out here's a case of almost like using technology to self-harm. It starts to become far more complex now. I was told by the Labour spokesperson, well, I don't believe she posted those comments up. Because that's difficult to deal with, isn't it? That's far more complex, isn't it? But again, here comes someone who's been abused on a certain platform, let's ban the platform. Going back to what primary age children are telling us, it's people that cause upset. The technology is just facilitating that. So, just to finish off then, and like I said, jump in the car and try and beat the school traffic out of Poole now, because that's going to be a challenge. Yes, content is an issue, but technology is only ever a facilitating platform for these sorts of things. And yes, you can have tools to help, but saying, we've got filters in place, we don't have to worry about that anymore, is a particularly facile thing to do. And if we start to explore it not in terms of safety, but in terms of well-being, it starts to make more sense, I feel, in terms of how you might address these problems. But education has to be the starting point for this. And we are starting from a very low bar here. I don't know if you remember, but before the last election, the Liberal Democrats were brave enough to say that we should have sex education in primary schools. The Daily Mail headline the next day, Lib Dems want to teach 7-year-olds how to have sex. You're not talking about that, you're talking about relationship education, you're talking about issues of consent, you're talking about issues of boundaries. One of the big things that online removes is the concept of empathy. If I was to say, Keith, on the way out, nice to see you today, Keith, but I think your shoes are rubbish, I'd see the impact of my words on him. If I was to go home later on and tweet, saw Keith felt today, his shoes were rubbish, I don't see the impact of my actions, so you can go away with more then. But you can talk about these from an early age. Sex and relationship education does not have to be about having sex properly. It's such a ridiculous thing. But anyway, I will finish there. Questions?